The TimeSnatch. One moment the desert was an empty waste, shimmering heat, and the next it was a screaming dust bowl. Ben Hunter saw it, but did not believe his own eyes. The grizzled old prospector flung up a protecting arm as the flying sand bit into his leathery skin and threatened to blind him. He sought shelter against the laden flanks of his mule, Henrietta. Peering out over the top of the panniers that contained his mining tools and stores, Ben made out the gleaming outline of the flat, saucer-shaped craft that was settling into the hollow that it had scooped out in the sand as it plunged from the sky. The high-pitched whine that had tortured Ben's eardrums died slowly into silence. He straightened his stooping back.
"Holy smoke! It must be one of them UFOs," he muttered.
Now he could make out the bluish-green hull, devoid of windows. Then something rose from the top of the craft, a sinuous arm of metal, topped by a bell-shaped object that moved restlessly, as if inspecting its surroundings. As it swung in Ben's direction, the questing eye became still. Sensing sudden danger, the prospector flung himself into the sand and began to crawl away towards the shelter of the rocks where he had camped the night before. But before he reached them, something, red and jelly-like, pulsing with an inner fire, emerged from the spacecraft and came after him. Ben saw it over his shoulder. He staggered to his feet with knees that had suddenly become weak with fear. He had faced many dangers in the desert during his years of prospecting for gold, but this new threat was so loathsome that he wanted to be sick. Fighting his reeling senses, he grabbed for the pistol in his belt that he kept ready in case of rattlesnakes. The red blob was undulating over his head. As he fired into the pulsating mass, he smelt the overpowering odour of musk. His voice managed a hoarse yell as he felt himself being drawn upwards. Then a merciful darkness descended upon him as he lost consciousness. Despite the air conditioning in the low one-story research building, Sarah Jane Smith felt stifled. She was in the top security lab of the unit installation on Last Hope Ridge that overlooked the desert. A few paces away stood the doctor, poring over some scientific instruments with Gustav Boole, the scientist who had been brought in by UNIT to examine a strange crystal, provisionally named Crystal Z. It had been brought back from an unmanned interplanetary probe. They had soon discovered that the unstable nature of Crystal Z required a hot and bone-dry atmosphere, hence its transfer to the desert laboratory, and the presence of the doctor to assist Dr. Boole in a task that could be fraught with danger.
"I don't believe it,"
Boole's incredulous whisper reached Sarah's ears as she moved towards one of the windows. She glanced out at the burning blue of the sky and thought longingly of the cool grey of the sky over Britain. She sighed and lowered her gaze to the electrified security fence that ringed the installation. Unit guards in shorts and shirt sleeves stood wilting in the heat. Sarah guessed that their guns must be almost too hot to hold.
"I just don't believe it."
It was Boole again. He had straightened from the bench where Crystal Z lay under ultraviolet rays. He wiped perspiration from his brow as he stared at the doctor.
"Did you ever see such a substance behave like this before, Doctor?"
The time and space traveller fingered his chin. "Very unusual, isn't it?" he agreed. Then he frowned thoughtfully. "But I have a feeling
I've come across Crystal Z before. If only I could remember where."
Sarah had turned her gaze to the two pondering scientists, but a sudden movement outside drew her attention to the window again. She stiffened and gasped, "Doctor, look!" Making straight for the security fence was a stooped-shouldered figure in dusty clothes. His wide-brimmed hat cast a shadow over his bearded features, and he shambled through the sand in an oddly stiff-legged manner.
"Why don't they stop him? That fence is electrified," rapped Dr. Boole, who was staring out over the doctor's shoulder.
But it was obvious that the unit guards were already aware of the danger. They were dashing towards the spot, yelling and waving to try to warn Ben Hunter of his danger.
"Oh no, it's too late," sobbed Sarah.
The prospector had reached the fence. He stretched out a hand. There was a blinding flash. When their eyes had recovered from it, an astonishing sight awaited them. Instead of a body crumpled in the sand outside the compound, they saw the dusty figure still shambling towards the laboratory, and now he was inside the security fence. The doctor stiffened. He stepped quickly to the bench again and picked up the small lead-lined box in which Crystal Z had been brought from Cape Canaveral. "With your permission, Dr. Boole, I shall put the crystal in my pocket until we find out what our strange visitor is after," he said. Even as he slipped the box out of sight, the other scientist grabbed Sarah's arm and hustled her away from the window.
"He's walking straight at the blank wall," he shouted. "Look out, Doctor!"
They shielded their eyes and shrank away as a section of the wall disintegrated with a searing flash of cold light.